know, we're raised in two different boxes. You're raised in a male or female, and that's how that's how you're to be perceived. Because upon meeting you, everyone wants to immediately categorize you as A or B, and then and then they pick out your nationality or your race or whatever, because that makes people comfortable. So, but I always feel like for me, there was all these variables in between, all these shades of gray that no one really talks about. No one knows how to talk about it, and so that makes it really scary for people. And I was just saying that the other day here at the show, one of our patrons had come up to me and he goes, "I have 5 women that are very curious about you." And I always seize the opportunity because I feel like a part of my job in doing what I do and living the way I do is to help educate people.
Absolutely.
And to eliminate that that scariness. And so I happily, with a smile, walked over and sat down and talked probably for 30-45 minutes to these women that had a range of questions that were just really intrigued, and I walked away from it feeling really good, and they felt very changed about the whole issue in itself. Right. And the best thing was that each of these women had children. They were moms, and I said in closing, I said, the best thing that you can do with this information is hopefully change your perception of how you approach it with your children. Because ultimately that's how we change, the next generation.
Absolutely.
And how they will approach it with their children, and, ultimately eliminating all this, crazy fear about it.
Right,
so.
yeah, there's just really no need for it. What kinds of questions did they ask you, or what kinds of questions do you get asked the most?
Oh, there's so many good questions. I won't even say the funny ones.
I know that some of them are probably quite, maybe more graphic than you might like, or maybe you're okay with it. I mean,
yeah. I think some of the questions were, do you date gay guys or straight guys?
Okay.
That's always a very popular question. And, my response to that is I've only ever dated straight men, because men look at me as a woman, and
right.
walk, talk, breathe, live as a woman, and that's how they perceive it. Where the ladies had a little question. More importantly, they had some confusion as far as like, well, how do you relate sexually to one another? And I always say that I think what you do behind closed doors really has nothing to do with anything. It's totally. I put it to them like this: how many couples, married couples, straight couples, if you will, behind closed doors do a role reversal?
Exactly. And
does that make their husband gay?
Right.
Because they may explore anal sex or whatever, which really made people, go, oh, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Gender for me is between the ears and not between the legs.
Okay.
So, so I think, even guys that want to date me, their first question to me is, what does this make me? I grew up in a really small, rural, little town, and with small mentalities, and, deeply religious, devoted. And that's all good. I mean, it made me who I am today.
Sure.
But in that, there was lots of questions for me. I always knew I was different. I always knew that I liked boys, and I knew that I related to my sisters.
Right.
I always felt like I always took better care of myself. Right. I was always concerned with my appearance, and I would always pretend that I was a girl growing up. I mean, for me, I don't know why, that was just natural for me. I mean, I grew up the youngest of of 4 siblings, all girls. And the ironic thing is, 2 of my sisters are lesbians, and one of the 2 lesbians feels like she is transgender.
Okay.
And she's just come to terms with this, and she's she's much older than me. But for me, it was like such an awakening moment for me whenever she even told me that, because it made me feel so somewhat normal.
Right.
Like, it wasn't just me and my
sibling
family
of yours.
that felt like this, that I actually had a sister that felt like this too.
And do you know if she plans to take steps to augment herself?
She feels like it's too late for her. And I told her, I said, it's never too late for you, to pursue your own happiness.
But is it true that maybe some trans persons don't always want to necessarily augment themselves physically? You can be trans and
Yeah, I think you could be trans and totally live. Some people some people live their entire lives without getting any kind of augmentation, and are totally fine without, no laser hair removal.
Hormones.
They don't even have to do hormones
Right.
or makeup or anything, because they feel they're a woman.
right.
I recently was in the recovery room with someone that had I just taken them to get their breast augmentation done, and there was a couple that was sitting across the room from me, and it was a husband and wife, and she, I believe, he was identifying as being transgender, and she had receding hairline, balding in the back, no breasts, no any kind of, but had on, girls' clothes, women's clothes, and, big hooker earrings, and,
that worked for her.
was saying, she was a woman, and it taught me just a little lesson, because it was just like, it's not so much about the aesthetics that we so want to lock ourselves into.
Right. That can be part of it, but it's not necessarily for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
But just for her to be able to approach life like that and be totally happy. And it's funny, I just saw her like weeks ago. I saw her and her wife walking into a restaurant the same way again, and I was like, good for you.
Yeah, good for you, exactly.
Good for you.